Hey, everybody, and good morning. Welcome to Arbitrary and Capricious, a podcast for people who give a fuck. This week, we are brought to you by Schnauzers. They bark when you don't want them to.
Especially whenever someone rings the doorbell.
It's true. I am your host, Jay Reed.
And I'm your other host, Aaron Robinson.
How you doing this morning, Aaron?
I'm doing good. I stayed out a little too late last night watching Infinity War, so I'm dragging a little bit this morning. But I got my Sonic Route 44 soda here to power me through this podcast and some weird things to talk about today.
Were you able to avoid any of the spoilers?
I was able to avoid all the spoilers, mainly because most of the spoilers were pretty funny. They were like, Batman dies at the end of Infinity War and stuff like that. But I just didn't read any articles, up until I saw the movie.
Fair enough.
So I'll be honest though, I'm not gonna say anything about the movie, what happens, but it was meh. I wasn't that impressed with it. But then again, I wasn't super impressed with Age of Ultron either. I kind of walked away saying I could have lived without that movie. But
yeah, my experience with Age of Ultron was I watched it on a plane and I kind of fell asleep as I was watching it, kind of in and out, and it didn't really make any sense, but I don't think it was supposed to. So I'm not really going to worry about it.
This felt like three movies slammed into one, and it didn't feel like it was I noticed that there were aspects of, because it had Guardians of the Galaxy in it, it had the Avengers in it. There was aspects of Jon Favreau movie making, Iron Man. There were aspects of John Gunn, or whatever his name is, the guy who did Guardians, but they didn't mesh well. It was these were different parts of the movie made by different directors that they just put together to make the Avengers.
That's too bad.
It didn't feel like a centralized vision so much. That was my thought.
Well, I think this ties in perfectly with our theme today, which I think is going to be stuff that nobody wants to talk about, but we should anyway.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's very much so.
That's what we got to talk about today.
Well, definitely, I want to talk about the Incel Rebellion and the uprising of the beta males.
Yes.
Just saying it seems ridiculous. But this is something that's happening kind of in the 4chan cesspool that is the dark heart of the internet. And I think that a lot of people, 4chan kind of makes a surfacing into pop culture periodically. We had Anonymous come out of 4chan. We had, a lot of the propaganda, the pro-Trump propaganda and stuff coming out of 4chan just because they're trolls. They saw Trump as the ultimate troll king. And so they're once again back and causing problems, and I think we need to talk about it. What about you?
Well, I want to go to Yemen.
Yemen?
Yemen, yes. We got a war there, which involves many of the world powers, including the United States. I want to talk about who's involved, what's going on, and whether or not we should be involved.
And whether or not this is another proxy war like Syria.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that.
We've already answered that question.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I think we definitely have some exciting old news to talk about this week.
What do you got for old news?
Well, we talked about how North Korea and South Korea had set a date for their discussions, and that the biggest news that came out this week was that in these discussions has come out that they're officially choosing to end the Korean War this year. 2018 will be the end of the Korean War if everything goes as planned. So that's huge. That's a 68-year war that has been ongoing. Finally,
I don't know. Do you really think that's significant? You don't think that's just on paper?
No, I do think that's significant. I mean, my grandfather fought in the Korean War, and every Thanksgiving we go to Louisiana, and he talks about it. He only talked about it within the last few years, but he's gone back numerous times and has actually gone into North Korea, I believe, and seen parts where he was during the war. Wow. And so, to me, there is something about this bring some closure to this, kind of finally ending this conflict that started in the last century. I think that's important. And honestly, the reunification of the Korean people, that's something that's important. And I saw this week that Kim came out and said that if the United States promises not to invade, then they will give up their nuclear weapons. So, I mean, I'm coming back to my grand theory of everything, and I think that Kim has just finally got it that being the king of the Hermit Nation sucks, and he wants to be the prettiest princess at the ball. I think he's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize for this. I don't think Trump is, because I honestly don't think Trump's done shit.
Oh, wow.
You know,
that's a hot take.
I think Kim's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize for being the one who softened Korea, who brought him to the table, who actually, you know, gave up the nuclear weapons. He is going to be Man of the Year. And it's going to go from being the most, you know, hated, annoyed man-child equivalent on Trump's level to being like the world's darling. That's what I'm predicting.
Wow. Okay. So 2 thoughts on this.
Okay.
First, if anybody heard that, that was my brother's schnauzer Heidi welcoming a visitor over to the house, not Heidi being tortured.
Okay, good. And also, that was just our sponsorship, speaking of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's a good dog. I want, if she's listening out there, I want you to know you're a good dog, Heidi.
You're a good girl.
But second, Kim Jong-un for the Nobel Peace Prize. That is an interesting point. I think you're completely correct that it is not going to be Trump, because I struggle to see his involvement here as being significant.
Well, I feel like the South Koreans, they keep saying, "Oh, Trump, like, you are definitely a big part of this, and you have to make sure that you bring America to the table, and you are the deal maker." I feel like they're feeding his ego, and they know how to work him. The South Koreans are working Trump, okay? Because they keep coming out and saying that he is an integral part of this process. But every time that I see him involved, it's like the South Koreans are saying, "Hey, we've done more work. Why don't you announce it to everybody?" He's like, "Look at this. We're doing a great job." You know? And so... I don't see the Nobel Society or whatever lowering the value of the Nobel Peace Prize by giving it to Trump. I feel like after that, nobody wants it.
Well, after what we talked about last week, my reasoning was the reason why North Korea is at the table negotiating now is not having anything to do with the outside response. It's simply that they created the weapon and the deterrent that they needed.
They got their negotiating piece. They're in the best position they'll ever be in.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is I think that he realizes this. We have a shot at this. We can enter the world stage as, you know, a big player and radically change this country. And I can be a rock star. And I don't have to be the guy who is the only person who has internet in my country and has lights on at night.
Right. I'm saying that it could have been President Herman Cain over there and Kim Jong-un would be at the table.
Yeah. No, it's an inevitability of time.
Yeah. Like President Ben Carson. It's
say these
it's
things.
got nothing to do with us. President Jeff. I don't know.
So these are big developments in Korea, obviously. I think there's an actual date for the Korean summit. And I think also Kim Jong-un came into South Korea for the first time. And he's the first North Korean leader to do so since the start of the war.
Now, I don't believe he came very far. Because
it was like a step into the country.
Right. Because I think they, you can see it on TV, they literally have a conference facility with a negotiating table half and half.
Half and half.
Doors on both sides so each side can come and go. And yada yada. I saw there was an episode of Conan that he did that was him doing Conan shtick walking around. So yeah, you can take a day trip up there from Seoul because it's not that far.
No, it's not.
I think by road we're talking an hour, maybe.
Yeah. Well, but once again, I don't think that Trump really had anything to do with this. You know, I mean. It's the South Koreans. They have aggressively pursued this, and the North Koreans have reciprocated, you know? And I still think that at the end of the day, Kim Jong-un is going to get the best deal out of anything.
Well, are we being too optimistic? Do you think that's...
You think things... Well, yes. Here are the complicating factors. Mike Pompeo, that pompous asshole, he is now our Secretary of State, and is going to be involved in negotiations from America's perspective. That's terrible, just generally. We know that what's her name, Haley, our UN ambassador, her and Trump are now kind of on the outs after he embarrassed her at the UN. So it's not like the White House is a well-oiled machine working very well. But honestly, I think that it doesn't matter. Like, I think that South Korea and North Korea are going to... The United States wants denuclearization of the peninsula. Kim has already put that on the table. We don't want to invade North Korea. They don't want us to invade North Korea. South Korea doesn't want us to invade North Korea. No one wants us to invade North Korea. So that's on the table. If we can get those things done and bring North Korea into the greater global community, I think it's a win.
Sure. Well, I read a quote from a former Obama administration official who said that talking with the Kim family is like going to Taco Bell. You might go looking for something new, but you always end up with the same thing.
Yeah, but how long was Kim Jong-un in office? Like, how long has he? It was during the Obama administration, wasn't it, that he died, that Kim Jong-il died?
Right. I think it was like 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that, and maybe whenever he first took over, having to be a hardliner and show that he was like his dad, that might be the case. But here in 2018, I think we got to see, is Kim Jong-un his own man? Is he going to have a different legacy than his father and his grandfather? Because I don't think things have ever gotten this far to this place on the negotiating table.
I mean, I want to make it clear. I'm optimistic about this.
Me too.
I am hoping that this is real, that they really are going to give up the weapons, that hopefully in integrating better into the world community, it will help end the human rights abuses, increase the standard of living for the North Korean people. That's the goal.
Now, here's the thing. Final complicating factor. Who probably wouldn't benefit from the reunification of the Korean Peninsula under a more South Korean vision?
Who would benefit?
Who would not?
Who would not benefit?
China.
Okay.
China doesn't like the United States' presence in Southeast Asia or that entire area. They don't like our presence in South Korea. They don't like our presence in Japan. They don't like our presence near Taiwan. And this has kind of been a buffer for them between South Korea, all the U.S. bases, and China, mainland, was this North Korean buffer. If that goes away and South Korea and North Korea become Korea and they're friendly with the United States, that potentially bolsters the United States' presence in the region and eliminates a buffer that China once had.
Sure, but don't you think that's kind of 20th century thinking? That just because we have troops on this narrow strip of land that also adjoins your strip of land, that's important? I
mean, wasn't China a little pissed off at Trump whenever he brought up questioning the two-China solution?
Right.
I mean, it's not a 20th century issue that was talked about in 2017.
No, I don't
caused a bunch of drama. I mean,
I don't mean that it's a 20th century issue. It's more that is North Korea really all that much of a buffer?
I think that anytime, physical buffer as so much as an influential buffer. Okay, this increases United States presence, United States influence in the region. It doesn't increase Chinese influence. It doesn't increase or decrease U.S. presence. Sure. It increases it. That's something China just generally has not liked for the last 30 years.
Sure.
Okay. So there, in my opinion, I think I'm just throwing this out there. I think this is a wild card issue as to how China's going to react. I mean, yeah, they don't want nukes on the peninsula either, but how much do they want America there?
I think a message that we need to send is that the reason why the troops are there in the first place is the threat from North Korea.
Also true.
So if we're able to create a peaceful situation, the troops can go home.
Yeah, the troops can go home. We don't need to be there.
Yeah, and I I hope that's first something that people understand and
But
are
do you
in
think that's
favor
actually
of.
going to happen?
I want that to happen.
I want that to happen, but do you think the United States is really
And
going
if
to
we
reduce
have an
military presence?
isolationist, protectionist president who's looking to cut the budget,
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, but at the same time, we have this is going to take multiple years. I don't think that we're going to be like, all right, Kim Jong, we got your nukes. We trust you. You don't have any secret bombs hidden anywhere. We're going to pull out all of our guns and all of our soldiers. Like, this is going to be like a 2-decade type event. You know what I mean?
sure.
Like, it's going to be a transition. That's how I feel. So, but anyways, enough about Korea. One last old news thing that I thought was interesting this week. The union fever is spreading across the South. And now the teachers' unions in Colorado and Arizona are striking and asking for better pay and better resources. And the thing that was the most interesting is that the Arizona one is very much more political. And very much more targeted at the Republicans and GOP, who don't have a lot of experience in this type of negotiation, apparently. So this is it's getting interesting to see that the austerity of the 2012 like wave of Tea Partiers and conservative austerity guys is now kind of starting to bite the GOP in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting to. It has been now for a few months.
I mean, if you cut the budget, then this is what happens.
Well, if you don't bring in enough revenue to pay for actual services that you actually need, I mean, this is what government's for. You're supposed to be educated. We don't want dumb people running our country.
Mm-hmm.
We want people to have a basic education. Mm-hmm. I don't want my doctor saying you got ghost in your blood. We need to have people educated. Yes. So this is important, and I'm glad that this is happening, and I'm glad that the unions are being a big function of that. I definitely think that we could be on the verge of a revitalization of the unions in this country, especially with how much power has been consolidated by the corporations at the top. Like, I think that that's the next logical step to try and fight back is the people just unionize, because at some point, special interest lobbying, it's not going to matter who you vote for. They're going to buy them all.
Like, to take a brief step into left-wing conspiracy theory corner.
Yeah.
I think this sort of situation feeds those conspiracy theorists who put on their foil hat and say that the elites are trying to keep the masses stupid. That's why they want to, that's why Republicans want to cut education budgets. It's because they want to keep us all dumb.
Well, to join in and harp on liberal conspiracy foiled tin hat corner, Texas, the GOP removed critical thinking from their platform in education. So there is enough evidence, like there's a scintilla of evidence, to use a legal term, that this is a policy of the GOP to keep people stupid. So I'm going to jump on that conspiracy a little bit.
I guess what I want to say is that I have enough optimism for our leaders, as flawed as they are. I don't want to live in a world where they are actively trying to keep them stupid. And I really don't believe that is happening now. But when you do shit like this, it makes it look like you're doing that.
It definitely makes it look like it. And the problem that we have, Jay, is human history. And humans have known for a long time that if you educate the upper echelon, then it's easier to control the proletariat, to use a Marxist term. So I don't know. I think this is something that we have to address as a society. So, well, that's enough old news, I think. Oh, one last thing. Trump also floated this week the idea of shutting down the government in order to get his money for border security and his wall. So, once again, the continuing saga of this ridiculous wall and its complete lack of necessity.
Haven't we learned our lesson about shutting down the government?
I don't know.
No one looks good afterwards.
No one looks good. No one looks good. It's going to be Trump shutdown. Like, Trump's the one that floated it. It's going to be Trump shutdown. And they're going to call it the Democrat shutdown because that's how politics works.
Like, he keeps trying to you know how they say that if you get all the credit, you have to also take all the blame.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to take as much credit from absolutely everything he can,
And
even
it's low
from
blame.
things that cannot be credibly attributed to him. But none of that blame is his.
None of the blame's his.
And you're right. If he shuts down the government, all of that blame is going to be laid at his feet. He's
Well,
going
like
to try
how
and blame the Republicans. He's going to try to blame the Democrats. But
it's the same with DACA. Like
Yeah.
whenever he was like the Democrats blew up DACA. No, they came together and put something like that actually could work, and you're like, I'm not going to sign that. You blew it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he takes no responsibility for himself.
Absolutely none.
So, speaking of a group of other people that don't take any responsibility for themselves, I want to talk about incels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, incels is a shorthand phrase for involuntarily celibate males. And these are a subgroup of individuals on the internet. And the internet is a wonderful thing that can educate us and connect us and, bring joy to lives of millions of people watching cat videos on YouTube. Or it can connect people who have terrible qualities and can rant and rave and have their little echo chamber and fester into something terrible. And that's what I think has happened here. These incels, involuntary celibates, kind of amass around 4chan and Reddit. I think their subreddit actually got shut down recently. But the reason why they're in the news recently is because of a killing that took place, a terrorist attack that took place in Toronto last week. On Monday, a gentleman named Alec Manassan drove his van, down a busy street and ran over 10 people, killing them. I think he actually ran over more, but 10 people were killed from his rampage. Now, the morning of his attack, he made a giant manifesto-ish post on Facebook, basically saying that he was pledging his allegiance to what he called the Incel Rebellion. Now, this isn't like an organized militant group. This isn't ISIS. This is kind of more loosely akin to Anonymous, a bunch of people on the internet that have similar ideals coming together and doing something. But they have developed a movement online, and they're united by their inability to convince women to have sex with them.
Wait, so is there an incel rebellion?
This is the thing, is that this subgroup on 4chan and Reddit have been festering and, fomenting about these issues and complaining about what they call Chads and Stacys, which are the, alpha males and attractive women that sleep with the alpha males,
right?
And won't sleep with them. And it's gotten extreme. Now, I personally believe everything post 9/11 in our culture has gotten more and more extreme, but we're seeing kind of in the post Me Too movement a counter movement of this incel like rebellion. They are pissed off that no one wants to have sex with them, and they're starting to get violent. Now, the first one of this group to really kind of make a mark was a man named Elliot Rogers, who in 2014 killed 6 and wounded 14 in a shooting spree in California. He justified his actions with a lengthy manifesto that he sent to acquaintances and then widely shared online as a retaliation against women as a group for refusing to provide him with the sex that he was quote unquote owed. Now, he became
the Toronto attacker. He made reference to this.
Yes, in his Facebook post, he referenced Elliot Rogers and called him the Supreme Gentleman, which is a term that Elliot Rogers actually called himself in his manifesto. So this is kind of, he's become the patron saint of the incels and a hero to many. And in fact, whenever they're talking about attacking or terrorizing the Chads and Stacys, they refer to it as ER, or going Elliot Rogers. So this weird subculture has been able to grow because of the internet, and they're getting more brazen and more, I guess, brave and willing to act out on these new beliefs that they're creating.
Mm-hmm.
So it honestly, I do feel like a lot of this I'm not going to say it's because of the Me Too movement, but I definitely think that they're becoming more outspoken because of how there's this shift in the power structure between genders in this country.
Wow, that's the first time that I've heard anybody draw any connection to the Me Too movement. That's interesting, and I guess my initial response to that is that I think that's a misunderstanding of the Me Too movement and what it actually represents.
Oh, for sure. But these guys,
No, yeah, these guys are extremists.
These guys are extremists for sure. And I'm not giving credit to any of them, but apparently some of the online communities that are less extreme have started censoring and auto-deleting references to Elliot Rodgers and to Alec Minison, so that they can try and reduce the extremism. But, and also I think subreddit, one of the subreddits was taken down after the attack, but there is another one that is still active called r/brain cells. That is less extreme, they said, but still they rail against Chads and Stacey's on there too.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you characterize this as terrorism.
Yeah, that's what everyone is saying, is that this is a form of domestic terrorism, a new form of it. And they're talking about it as terrorism, whenever they're talking in these chats. They're wanting to cause problems. They're wanting to terrorize the people, the normies, as they call them, who don't have their genetic defect, as they claim. Which they claim this is, it's about not being a hyper masculine, male, which I find funny because that's kind of the genre, or not genre, but the archetype that our society is coming against right now in a lot of ways. The hyper male, the alpha male. But these guys, they blame the women. They're saying it's the women's fault because they want the alpha male. They don't want the nerds or the geeks or the, I guess, lower echelon of men.
It's like the enemy of my enemy should be my friend kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's not how this is going on, and it's interesting that even though they're mad at the Chads, they seem to be targeting those Stacys mainly, because the attacks have been mainly focused on women.
Do you think that's because these incels feel inferior to the Chads and they feel like if they engage them that they're just going to lose?
It's possible.
They've cast themselves as the loser already.
This is very true. Now, something that's recently started to rise is some of the incels are starting to use a more Marxian worldview to describe themselves. They describe themselves as the oppressed class that is, living in a social system that's rigged in favor of the other men.
So are they going to collectivize the means of production?
Well, and I think this is the whole point, is they're trying to unite around this ideal and cause a social revolution, but doing it through violence. I mean,
so they're going to use violence to force women to have sex with them?
Yeah, this seems like, that's what I'm saying.
You guys haven't thought this out.
This is exactly what. That's why I said I feel like this is kind of like a weird reaction to the Me Too movement and the changing structure of our gender roles in this country, is because it's all about that weird toxic masculinity. It's all about, I want to be the man and I want the woman to be the woman type mentality,
So I don't mean to grant any legitimacy to these people at all, but can we just examine society for a second and say, well, why do these particular angry men vent their anger in this way? What about our society is causing them to do this?
I think a big part of it is a misconception, I guess, about sex. Like, there's, in Western civilization in America, with the high levels of pornography, like, sex is very fantastical. It's a fantasy-based thing in our society. And so I feel like because in porn it's depicted as something that almost is just that men are owed, that they see that and they rationalize that this is how it should be for me, and it's not. And so then, because there's this gap between their fantasy and reality, they become upset, frustrated. Now, with the internet, they're able to connect with other people who are running into the same problem. Humans are notorious for rationalizing and rationalizing terrible conduct, and so it can't be their fault. It can't be because they're assholes or they're inconsiderate or they're misogynist or whatever. It has to be someone else's fault. And so they find other people who agree it's someone else's fault, and they begin to yell and rant and rave in their echo chamber, and it gets louder and louder, and it seems that they're more and more right because it's all they hear is these people who agree with them. And eventually they get bold and brave enough to act on this, bolstered belief. And I think that's how we get here.
Yeah, I think your point about pornography is interesting, and I would continue to point the finger more broadly at the entertainment industry and kind of societal expectations in general for relationships between men and women, where, for one thing, up until really recently, women in fiction, women in media, movies, TV, even literature, they were the potted plant in the corner until it was time to either rescue them or have them be the rewards.
And a lot of times in movies, the men writing the women's roles are not very well versed with women's dialogue or personalities or anything. So
they're not real. They're not real people. And the people throw around that term objectifying women, but really you're turning them into objects. You're taking away their humanity. And at that point, once you don't see them as human anymore, it's easier to say that, well, you owe me this. I deserve this just by existing.
Well, and that's the other thing is some of these incels refer to women as feminoids, and that's female humanoids. They don't even refer to them as humans. Mm-hmm. They're human-like. And this gets back to the kind of like way that human beings saw the human race back in the 1800s, 1900s. This is that eugenics, my gender, my race is superior. So therefore, we, might is right. We get to take what we want. We're the dominant race. We're the dominant gender. It's our way or the highway. And that's the opposite direction our society has been going over the last 200 years.
Yes, that's not how this works. We're not going back that way.
Mm-mm. It's once again that 1950s mentality, but it's different because it's not the alpha males. It's the beta males that want that alpha male mentality. It's almost like they're jealous that they can't have that like male-dominated society that the 1950s dad had.
And I think unacknowledged, this anger at women for denying them something they feel like they deserve or are owed, I think that anger fuels a lot of the hatred for women just in general. And this really, it's a problem that goes far back beyond 4chan. This is just, as you said, given them a platform for them to assemble in mass
and grow support and evangelize and bring more people into the fold. And that's one of the downsides and dangers of the free market of ideas, is that sometimes really shitty ideas catch fire. And it takes us talking about it and bringing light on the subject in order to let people understand what's going on out there. That's why journalism is so important. Don't let the White House convince you that the journalists are the enemy of the people. Like, that is one of the worst pieces of propaganda of this era.
Oof. Are you familiar with the Lubies massacre that happened in the 90s in Killeen?
I am not.
This was October 1991. A man in Killeen, Texas, drove his pickup truck through the window of a Lubies restaurant when it was apparently packed for lunch. He pulls out 2 semi-automatic pistols and starts blasting away and manages to kill 23 people. And while in doing so, he's shouting, "All women of Killeen and Belton are vipers. This is what you've done to me and my family." And apparently this guy, he'd been known amongst his family and his friends to be a misogynist. He hated women. I believe he killed himself after a brief shootout with police. So Of course, we've never really known his true motive, but a lot of people suspect that it was along similar lines. Just this hatred for women causing him to lash back out at those perceived to have wronged him.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's definitely not a new issue. It's just that the way that it's manifesting is new, and it's a little terrifying because it's organized, and it's or more organized than just a lone wolf. And they have a fan club. They have cheerleaders. You know, the incels were rooting for Alec and for Elliot Rogers. They were saying we need more stuff like this. You know, the normies need to live in constant fear that their Chad and Stacy lives are going to be disrupted by us because we didn't get sex.
So what's your end game there? So now nobody gets to have sex?
It's just like we're just going to shit on everybody's lives and make it, you know, terrible because we are unhappy. Like this is the whole thing. It's these very selfish, closed-minded people that don't realize that they need to work on themselves. It's just a failure of taking responsibility for your own actions, for your own life.
I am certain that there are no incels who are listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah,
but I'd like to take a moment to address them. No one owes you sex, like ever. That's like a rule. Like that's not how life works. No one owes you anything. So deal with it.
Deal with it. Yeah. No, it's a sad situation. It's a sad situation. And I don't know what happens from here. I know that like the Southern Law or Poverty, Law Center, I can't remember the name of it. Mm-hmm. They have listed them as a terrorist organization now, or at least a terrorist entity, the Incel grouping. Mm-hmm. There's someone to watch. And what's funny is we've had a couple of these like white male chauvinist, groups show up in different forms because honestly, the neo-Nazi alt-right movement is very much a super masculine or hyper masculine, white movement. I don't see a lot of women necessarily at the Nazi rallies, but that's another one that kind of is similar to this. It may not have the same ideology behind it, but it's once again about, hey, our perceived way of life, what way we want life to go is being threatened, and we're lashing out about it.
It's like you have to feel like you had something in the past, or you should have had something, and that is being denied to you, or it's being taken away from you.
Everyone wants to be the victim because then they can justify their shitty behavior.
Yeah. I think you're hitting on something there. You have to cast yourself as a victim now. And I wonder if that's another post 9/11 change.
Mm.
I mean, did you ever watch that sitcom, The League?
Yeah, no, I did. Great show.
You know the guy who played Kevin, the one who had like the wife and the kid?
Yeah, no.
Not Ruxin, the other one.
Was it Batman Chalupa?
Yeah, the Chalupa Batman was his son.
Chalupa Batman was his son, yeah.
So that actor, he, for many years after 9/11, before he was more famous, he claimed in interviews that he was in the World Trade Center on 9/11 and escaped when he wasn't. That was just a lie.
Oh, wow.
And he got caught and just kind of apologized and said it was stupid. I don't know why I did it. And now nobody knows or cares. But there's this mystique about being a victim that people believe that it's this golden ticket. It's like winning the lottery.
Well, it's almost like you can't question them if they're a victim.
Mm-hmm.
That's where, like, and this is, this may not be a popular statement, but this is why there has to be limits to the Me Too movement, because you can't just sit there and say, oh, well, she says she was assaulted or raped, we just have to believe her. Well, no, we need to prove that in a court of evidence. We have had a system for 800 plus years, common law, that has worked well for us. Let's keep using it, but let's bring this out. Let's flesh this stuff out in our society. Let's deal with it. Let's let the law do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
But let's have our limitations. We have to have some, structure and limitations. You can't. It's like whenever the unions first kind of came about. No one wanted the unions. The corporations didn't want the unions. The government didn't want the unions. They finally got, to be legitimized, and then they got way too powerful and they became corrupt, and the government had to curb union power. So you got to balance these principles and interest, you know. So, gosh, I mean, I don't know what we do to try and deal with this stuff, but it's definitely an issue that people seem to now kind of strive to be the victim in order to make points, whether politically or in an argument or just in life.
I mean, how do you connect with a man who believes that he's never going to have sex because I guess he believes he doesn't deserve it, except that he feels he's owed it? How do you connect that to that man and convince him that that's not true?
You know, one thing I think that would be helpful for these kind of guys, I went through a program for the church. It was kind of like a 12-step program that just anyone who had any issues, whether it was like, you know, chemical dependency, or whether they had like relationship issues, or if they had addictions or anger issues, just anything, they could come and talk and work through it. And one of the things that really was interesting about that chapter of my life was that talking with all these people with different perspectives, different, you know, walks of life, with the stuff that they struggle with and that they deal with on a daily basis, you kind of get outside yourself and stop focusing so much on your own problems, and you kind of start to get some perspective. I feel like these gentlemen suffer from an extreme lack of perspective. And because they have created this isolation chamber, this echo chamber, they are doing no favors for themselves. And I think the only thing that can really solve this for them in the long run, or solve this for anybody, is to get out and focus on someone other than yourself. You know, get out and be a part of a community that's not just there to get you riled up about this common interest. See the families that are around your neighborhood and how they're happy and just want to live their lives. And guess what? By going out and meeting people, people have friends, and they may say, hey, this guy's a nice guy. You'd like our friends, you know, Carrie or whatever. And maybe you could actually have a normal life too. If you sit at your computer all day ranting and raving why no one likes you because you sit in your house all day and never do anything, that's your fault.
So we just need better social engagement across the board.
I think that's something that is always helps. We're a social animal. We're social beings. That is why we are successful as a society. It's because of our socialization, because of our interconnectedness. You know, and the internet has provided them a substitute for that interconnectedness, but it's defunct. It's defective. It's reinforcing the wrong principles.
It's almost like before, if you were a hermit, you were a hermit by yourself.
Yeah.
But now you can join a community of hermits.
Yeah, a collective of hermits that all want to rant about the same thing.
And like praise each other's hermitness. Because we've all been on those message boards where it's oh, me on a Saturday doing nothing. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but if you isolate yourself from society, that's the problem. Exactly.
So we'll see. We will see. You know, I definitely believe that as a society, investing in, you know, infrastructure and programs to help the community grow and intermingle is always beneficial. I think that helps with racial relations, helps with gender relations, it helps with, you know, religious relationships. It helps with every aspect of the cohesion of our society.
Absolutely.
It reduces the differences. So, but yeah, that's the kind of where we're at with the incels right now. This is kind of new, so if there's any more developments, we'll come back to it in the old news section, as we tend to do. But I believe, do you have any final thoughts on the incels?
No, I think I made myself heard.
Okay, you've let your position be known.
I think I have.
Very good. Well, I'd like to touch on some weird news, and this is not a typical weird news story, but rather it's weird in its motivation. And I don't know, did you see this week that Speaker Ryan, soon to be ex-Speaker Ryan, has fired the White House, or the House of Representatives chaplain?
I saw the headline, but I didn't dig into it. What's going on?
So it's a pretty non-controversial job. You know, the chaplain offers daily prayers before the start of each house session, provides spiritual counsel for all of the lawmakers, but kind of just out of the blue, Ryan asked Reverend Patrick J. Conroy, to step down. Now, they're saying that they had received, or at least Ryan has said that he has received numerous complaints from congressional members about the Reverend. But a Republican, Peter King from New York, who is, I believe, a Catholic, came out and said that he had heard no complaints about the chaplain at all. Now,
Okay.
yeah, I thought that was interesting that a Republican specifically came out. He says, I haven't heard any, maybe they have. And the Democrats say, we think the reason that you fired him is because when we were doing the tax cuts, he came out and in his prayer asked everyone to remember the poor when voting on the tax cuts.
Oh, come on.
And so that's one kind of shitty quasi-motivation that might be behind Ryan's firing of him. And also, I think he's the only chaplain ever to be fired in the history of the United States.
Wait, hold on, back up one second. So who is it saying that it's motivated by the prayer?
The Democrats are saying this. They're saying this is bullshit. There's no complaints. This guy's fine.
So this is all just gossip.
This is Hill gossip. This is the Hill gossip. But then the other thing is that a Baptist congressman from, I think, Georgia came out and said, you know, he doesn't have a family because he's Catholic, and I have a family, and a lot of people in Congress have a family.
Oh,
and honestly, we think that we should have someone that we can relate to better. Well, that's Protestants versus Catholics type mentality. And so it could be religious motivation that the GOP Protestants are not happy with having a Catholic, the second Catholic chaplain in the history of the United States, and has only been in the job for 7 years. But that could be the other motivation. We don't know. Ryan just says that it was because of the complaints that he had received, and won't disclose what those complaints are. But either way, this is weird. I think this is just weird. Weird behavior. Take a second
and say how much I hate that family thing, because like what's the theme of the 21st century? That everybody matters, no matter who, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you identify yourself, what makes you different. We're all the same, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Like, stop demonizing single people. When you say, oh, he doesn't have a family, he couldn't possibly understand what we go through.
Oh, you don't have children. You don't understand yet.
Guess
you
what,
will
buddy?
One day.
Like, I know that you want to have like clean water and air to breathe, and you don't want to have traffic on your way to work, and you don't want to have crime. I get that. There's no reason I wouldn't get that.
Are his prayers somehow less valuable because he doesn't have a wife and kids?
And to say that because, you know, a priest couldn't possibly understand people. I mean,
isn't that how the Catholic Church has operated for like 1,500 years?
I mean, I never thought I'd be here defending priests, but like, come on, man. Like, that's an unfair criticism.
That's an unfair criticism. I agree. And so they didn't offer a very good reason. They didn't offer any examples of the complaints. The Democrats have offered at least a liberal, you know, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory option. That if he did say that during the prayer, I could see the Republicans getting pissy about that, and that could be the complaint, was that he got political during a prayer.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the complaint, but still, I think that of all the things that someone in that position should do, telling the leaders of our country to remember the poor, that's him doing his job. He got fired for doing his job.
Oh, well, do you happen to know, had this guy been there a long time? Is
7 years.
7 years.
He took over from the first Catholic priest to ever be the house chaplain, who I think did it for maybe 10 something years, something like that.
Like, why even bother? Like, why? But also, the tax cuts were like months ago, right?
It was, but see, that's the thing, is it could have been like he said it, and then like they were so busy doing everything that it just now got to the point where Ryan's office was like, all right, let's deal with the chaplain. Also, if he fired him right after the prayer, we'd all know. We'd instantly know. Now they have plausible deniability, and then they can say, oh, we had lots of complaints about him. That's called, I call that unverifiable bullshit, UVB.
Like, I also hate to defend Paul Ryan, but I think I'm just going to call gossip on this one.
I mean, it is definitely Hill gossip. It is definitely Hill gossip, but it's the first firing of a chaplain in the history of this country.
Okay.
It's unusual circumstances, and there was no real reason offered. It was nebulous. I'm just saying,
sure,
this is the quintessential lack of transparency that is kind of shitty about the government.
Well, do you want to talk some more conspiracy theory fodder?
Sure. Do you have anything?
Yeah. Have you heard anything about Alfie Evans?
Yeah, right. I know tangentially a few things, that it's a kid sick in like England, that due to the way their medical system works over there, apparently the treatment that they want him to have was not approved, but either it was experimental or something like that, and it wouldn't necessarily work. And so their family has been like fighting, I guess, to just take him home, and the hospital's been fighting to not let them. I think that's about all I understand about it.
So, like, some of that, yes, some of that, no.
Okay.
So it is a sick kid in England. He's, I think, under 2 years old, or just about 2 years old. He's been in the hospital since December 2016. Wow. He's got a neurodegenerative condition, but it's undiagnosed, meaning that they don't know what it is. The doctors have never seen this before. His body is just shutting down, and he's been on a ventilator. And eventually the doctors have decided that the best thing for him is to disconnect the ventilator, because at this point he's really just a machine. You know, the machines are doing all the work for him. There's nothing going on there.
Yeah.
The parents disagree, and they went to court over it, because that's a procedure, is when the doctors and the parents disagree, you go to court, and the courts decide. So the courts ruled in favor of the doctors. The parents then said, well, okay, we found a hospital in Italy run by the Vatican that wants to take him. And the court said no. And that's really when people started to get pissed, because the parents want to take him to another hospital to try and get treatment, but the courts say no. However, my understanding is that there is no alternative treatment. They don't have a plan.
It's just the hospital's willing to take him.
It's just the hospital's willing to take him, and maybe we'll think of something. And the court said, no, in the interests of the child, it's better to just pull the plug, so to speak. And so the system was turned off, and the kid remained alive. And usually that allows the people campaigning for the kid, or at least I don't mean to say that, the people campaigning to continue the treatment of the child, when the kid continues to live after they turn off the equipment, that allows them to say, see, there's life here, we have to protect it. But in fact, in medical terms, that's normal. You know, when you turn off the ventilator, they might survive for a little while, but not long term. And that's what happened here. He passed away about a week later. So I think it's being mischaracterized by some people.
Yeah.
Because first they're trying to say, oh, he could have been saved. He couldn't have been saved. He could have been preserved, but there was no plan.
Yeah.
And second, they're blaming this on the socialist healthcare system. My understanding is that this has nothing to do with the socialist healthcare system. The exact same thing, if it happened here, I think it would also happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is that in capitalism, if there's a need, there's probably someone selling you something. So you probably could have kept going until he passed away.
I guess maybe the difference here is they would keep the machine on until the parents couldn't pay anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
miserable.
Is that better?
No, that's not. You're right. People are definitely mischaracterizing. I see people share this on Facebook all the time. Oh, I hate those stories that people share. It's like, oh, this is the government trying to kill our children.
And I think one of the most ridiculous parts is that the nation of Italy unilaterally named the child an Italian citizen and threatened to bring charges against the UK officials for murdering an Italian citizen if they disconnected the life support.
That is some weird statecrafting going on.
Right?
That is, man, is Italy just generally bored this year?
So, like, okay, so what if I've decided that I've founded the Republic of Jayistan and I don't like the death penalty anywhere, so I'm going to name anyone who's on death row as a citizen of Jayistan and then prosecute you for murder. Like, isn't that the same thing?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's arbitrary. You might even say it's a little capricious.
There it is. What help is that? Like, what do you think you're doing?
You know, I feel like the Italian government did that at the bequest of the Vatican. The Pope probably was like trying to maneuver that, and I can understand the Pope wanting to help out or the Vatican wanting to help out, but that I agree. It doesn't sound like you're actually helping that kid. You didn't have a plan. This was an unknown neurological disorder. It was a medical mystery, and it's unfortunate. It's very sad, but it happens. It happens. Very sad.
It really is, and I hope this cleared it up some.
Yeah.
But speaking of clearing things up, you want to go to Yemen?
I mean, that will never be cleared, but yes.
No, it will not. So that is something I want to try and do here today, is explain a little bit about what's going on in Yemen, who's involved, and why we're involved, and should we be involved, and maybe even what side should we be involved on.
And where is Yemen?
Where is Yemen? Yes. Yemen is a very interesting country. They have some islands that are between the Arabian Peninsula and kind of the Horn of Africa, Somalia, that area, that you look at the pictures of the wildlife there, and it is incredible. It looks like something from a sci-fi magazine from the 60s because it's so ecologically separated from the rest of the world that this incredible diversity of wildlife, both flora, I think it's really just the plants. I don't think it's really in the animals, but I could be wrong about that. But the plant life, it looks so alien, but it's incredible, and I would love to go there, but you can't.
It is dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous, particularly now because there's a war going on there. And you wouldn't believe how many people say, what? When you say that? There's a war in Yemen? And what's Yemen? Wasn't that a movie with Matt Damon? Like, so let's talk. Yeah, salmon fishing in the Yemen. Wasn't that Matt Damon?
Oh, I've never even heard of this movie.
Oh, yeah, I think it was a chick flick.
Oh, okay.
I never saw it. Believe it or not. I like a good chick flick, but not this one. Anyway, so Yemen, it's a country at the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula. It borders both Saudi Arabia and Oman. It has, yeah, no, right? I've actually heard a lot of great things about Oman. It's been at the top of a lot of like travel lists. Yeah,
but how much did they pay to get on the top of that travel list?
You know, I don't really know. That's a good question.
It's like Qatar, where we're going to have the World Cup, right?
Yeah, 2022.
How much did they pay to have it on the surface?
Millions. Oh, man. Don't get me started on that, by the way. So back to Yemen. Yemen has been plunged into civil war. The situation can kind of be traced back to the Arab Spring, in fact. So in 2011... Arab Spring happens, and the people of Yemen rise up against their President Saleh, S-A-L-E-H. He had been president of unified Yemen since 1990. He'd actually been the president of northern Yemen, dating back to about 1978. So he's one of your longtime Arab rulers.
He is like a stalwart dictator.
Yeah, he's been around a while. Yemen is also a country that is starkly divided. It's about 50-50 between Sunni and Shiite.
Interesting.
And you know what? I wasn't able to find whether or not Saleh was either Sunni or Shiite, but I think he might have been Shiite, but don't quote me on that.
We can have yes.
So Saleh, he's president up until he is removed from office in 2012. Actually, peacefully, they're able to negotiate a settlement between the government and opposition groups, where his longtime vice president Hadi comes to power. Now, keep in mind we've got the Sunni Shiite split, but we've also got a north-south geographic split where our old president Saleh, he was from the north. Hadi, he's from the south. So Hadi comes to power, but he's really no more successful in uniting the country. He has to fend off political challenges from southern separatists. He also has to fend off actual attacks from Al-Qaeda, because guess what? Al-Qaeda's everywhere.
Al-Qaeda's everywhere.
So there's a group in the north known as the Houthis who they've had a low-level insurgency going back to about 2004 against the Yemeni government of Saleh and then Hadi. Well, the Houthis see their moment. They are widely believed to be supplied by and supported by, but not necessarily controlled by Iran. These Houthis are Shia. In 2014, they step up their insurgency and start attacking Sunni cities in their vicinity in hopes of driving them out of the area and having better control over their declared homeland. So the Houthis eventually expand. They attack the capital, Sana'a. They take over. They put the president, Hadi, under house arrest. They actually are able to broker a UN-approved agreement with the government in order to form a unity government. But once again, the Houthis, after initially agreeing to the agreement, disavow it, saying that it's unfair, and they put themselves in charge. They dissolve parliament. They have Hadi resign and, as I said, put him under house arrest and declare themselves in power. So Hadi eventually escapes down to the port city of Aden in the south, declares that he has withdrawn his resignation as president. He says that the Houthi takeover of the government is illegitimate, and he is in fact still head of the legitimate government of Yemen. In fact, most of the international community supports Hadi over the Houthis.
Okay,
if you can track this so far.
It's vaguely familiar to the South American switching of governments and shit like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yemen had been a longtime partner of both the United States and Saudi Arabia because Al-Qaeda was active here. So we propped up the Yemeni government in hopes that they would keep Al-Qaeda in check.
Yeah.
And before we start to get into the intervention, some Yemen experts were actually saying that if any support should be given here, it should be given to the Houthis, because the Houthis have been much more successful in keeping the Islamists, i.e. Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, keeping those people in check. We don't really have problems with those within the Houthis. But to give a counter argument to that, I would like to read to you what is written on the flag of the Houthis.
Okay.
This is literally what their flag says in Arabic script. It says, Allah is greater, death to America, death to Israel, curse the Jews, victory to Islam.
It's pretty standard extremist stuff.
Yeah, so they're not really, the best people to partner with either. And probably the reason why they're able to keep the Islamists in check is that
they're basically Islamists.
Basically Islamist light. So, that's really not any better of a solution.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to Yemen. This is about beginning of 2015 when this really starts to kick off. So the Houthis have taken the capital, Sana'a, which is sort of in the center of the country. Hadi, with the internationally recognized government, has retreated to Aden on the southern coast. And the Houthis, well, what are they going to do next? They're going to attack Aden, where the government they're fighting is. Hadi escapes to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and strikes a deal with the Saudis for their intervention into the war. trying to sell to them that the security of Saudi Arabia is at stake here. So a Saudi-led coalition intervenes on behalf of the Hadi government against the Houthis. This includes United States logistical support, meaning intelligence on selecting targets, as well as mid-air refueling of aircraft.
Wow.
Yeah, we're refueling their jets on their bombing runs so that they can go back for another one.
Wow.
Yeah, so don't act like we're not involved, y'all.
Yeah, don't act like you're not involved. This is like the Russian involvement in Syria.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's worse, but it's up there.
It's up there.
Other countries involved include Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Sudan, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain.
And this is like the Saudi Arabian, like you can call it the Saudi Arabian coalition, but this is like all of Saudi Arabia's influential partners in the region. Right.
It's basically the Sunni countries with jets. And two takeaways here. First, Sudan has jets.
Sudan has jets?
Like, good for you guys.
Also, weren't they like the newest country on the planet?
That's South Sudan.
Okay.
And I think they're the black ones. So maybe they don't have jets.
Wow, that was a little rough.
No, that's how they split. It was an ethnic thing, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I just talked out of my ass. I think I just talked out of my ass.
Little ass talking.
So we might have to edit this.
I don't think we can edit a live video.
Oh, man. Anyway, number 2.
For any South Sudanese people listening to this podcast ever in the future, we apologize for mischaracterizing your independence or whatever you are. So,
yes, we do. So second takeaway, Qatar was initially part of the coalition, but after the diplomatic split last fall is no longer taking part.
Who?
Qatar? Qatar?
Qatar. Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, there's a lot of I don't really know how to pronounce like people have been there have told me that the closest way to say it is Qatar, like just like Cutter, pronounce it that way. But you hear the radio ads for the airline, they say Qatar.
Qatar Airways.
Qatar Airways. So I don't know, man.
I got you. I just when you said that, I was thinking like scissors, like a box cutter. I was like,
yeah, exactly. But anyway. So they're no longer taking part. To highlight some of the U.S. involvement here, the bombs being dropped on these people are U.S. made. They include cluster bombs, which are outlawed in most of the world, but of course not by us.
Why would we outlaw fantastic bombs that we make and sell to each other?
Yeah, exactly. They're very expensive.
Very expensive.
There's a lot of markup you can get on those. There's also been international criticism of basically indiscriminate bombing of civilians. I read that some estimates put it as much as 1 in 3 Saudi bombs will kill a civilian in Yemen. 1 in 3.
That's bad.
Yeah. The United States, we haven't had, so to speak, direct involvement beyond. I did read that there were some Tomahawk missile strikes on Houthi radar sites. So it sounded like kind of like our Syrian strike, a very limited, targeted strike on a military target.
Well, yeah, but hold on. You said that we were helping with logistics, and
Correct.
They're targeting, and they're hitting 1 out of 3 bombs that's hitting civilians. I mean, either we're doing some terrible logistics, or they're really bad at following instructions.
I think that you're right. Putting those two things together is a scary thought.
So, I mean...
But that assumes that every target is being selected by the United States.
That's true. That's also true. It may have just been that the United States is feeding them prime targets, and then they have autonomy on their general warfare tactics.
Because we've been doing drone strikes there for years.
For sure.
Usually Al-Qaeda suspects, and that has continued throughout the Civil War. We're still drone striking whenever we find anybody Al-Qaeda that we can. Because,
have a
US
from ISIS and Al Qaeda.
Yeah, it's like Geico. What we do.
Yeah, honestly, they need to pull a neo-Nazi and just like rebrand. That seems to be the next step. Just make name yourself the Alt Qaeda. Oh, I got myself tickled on that one. Jay did not like that joke. Oh no, the joke was so bad that it kicked Jay out of the call. If you will pause with me for a moment while I wait for him to come back in. I will say this: something that I remember about Yemen is that they had the United States citizen that was over there that was that they drone striked that had joined Al Qaeda.
Hello.
Hey, he's back. Yeah,
I'm back.
I was saying that joke that I told was so bad that it knocked you off the air.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So then I tried to fill the air with my story about the U.S. Citizen that joined Al Qaeda that was killed by drone strike over there.
Oh, was that in Yemen? Where was that?
I'm pretty sure that was Yemen. That was the remember the dossier and the letter from the AG explaining why Obama had the authority to kill a U.S. citizen outside of her borders who had joined a terrorist cell and it wasn't a violation of due process.
Yeah, don't you think that should be a bigger deal than people think?
That should have been a massive deal.
The United States government just drone strikes someone, and it was a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter that it was in Yemen. It doesn't matter that he was a terrorist subject. He's a U.S. citizen.
I mean, if you can drone strike someone for being a terrorist, then can you assassinate someone for being a spy if they're a U.S. citizen?
Oh, man. You should watch The Leftovers. It's a fantastic show. And, like, spoiler alert, but...
No. Don't.
It involves this subject.
I don't care. I apologize. But I have already promised my girlfriend that I would watch The Leftovers, and there's no way.
I will give no details.
No details.
It's a great show. Everybody go watch it. But you're right. If they can do it there, why can't they do it here?
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that I was trying to fill the dead air with whenever you lost call. I'm glad that you were able to join back in, and we didn't have to start a new segment.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It just kind of froze on me, and I was ranting about our current Secretary of Defense, James Mattis.
Oh, gosh. Well, Al-Qaeda. That was the joke that killed Jay's internet.
Nice. But what I was saying about James Mattis is that he's actually called for United States military ships to search Iranian commercial ships in the Arabian Sea in order to find contraband weapons, which is an act of war.
Oh, wow.
Like, you can't just go around searching up other people's ships.
Yeah, we are not the world police. We don't we don't have jurisdiction there.
Not doing that shit. Mm-mm.
Yeah. And also isn't international waters governed by UN treaties?
I mean, there is a United Nations treaty on the law of the sea, but like the international waters, it's pretty much like you don't search somebody else's ship unless you want their navy searching your ships.
Yeah,
like it's pretty much golden rule out there, guys.
Who'd have thought Navy operates by the golden rule?
Why shouldn't it?
I have no reason.
Sure.
Okay, so. Continue on. Back to Yemen.
Oh, I was going to scare you a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
There has also been a kind of scary amount of private involvement in this war.
Oh, like private, like Blackwater type forces involvement?
Exactly. Blackwater themselves. They're actually called Academy with an I, Akademi.
Academy War and Outdoors.
Oh, that's bad.
That's
bad. So they've changed their name. They're now known as Academy, but they were heavily involved on the side of Hadi and the Saudi coalition. In fact, the New York Times reported in November of 2015 that the UAE had contracted in 450 mercenaries from Colombia, Panama, El Salvador, and Chile. And my thought from that was, can you imagine the the mercenaries from El Salvador? Like, they're such badasses in El Salvador that they've decided to go kill people elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, isn't El Salvador where that gang, like the most notorious gang on earth, is from?
Yeah, like the MS-13 or something.
MS-13, like that. Yeah.
And
like they sent MS-13 to Yemen.
Yeah. Right?
They're going to be running the place in like 10 years.
They actually, maybe a little inkling of hope here is that Blackwater has actually allegedly pulled out of Yemen. They pulled out in 2016 after severing more than 100 casualties by some reports. So it's almost like the response to the military-industrial complex of war is always good for business. not until your business owns the people being killed.
Mm.
And it's in some instances that business is the government.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If you're hiring mercenaries from foreign countries, I wonder if they can pay them a lot cheaper and not offer many severance packages whenever they get killed in Yemen.
Now, looking into this, I actually think that the Blackwater thing might be a little bit overblown overall, because what it looks like is what Blackwater was they were training, and they were also like the private security for the really high level people.
Now, let me ask you this. You said they were training.
Yeah.
We kind of criticized Russia for saying, hey, we're not in Syria, we're just offering air support. Hello, United States offering air support. We're not really on the ground, Russia. Oh, there's mercenaries. Russian mercenaries are over there. And then you turn, and then in Yemen, there's a U.S. company, a private security firm, which is basically just our capitalistic way of saying mercenary.
They're all ex-special forces who are now just getting contracts from the DoD rather than working directly for the army.
And that's what I'm saying. Is how is this not exactly what we were criticizing Russia for in Syria?
I think it's similar in one respect, in that from what it looks like, the mercenaries weren't actual Americans.
Oh,
so there's a little bit more attenuation there, in that they weren't just Russians who had taken the flag off of their shoulder.
Okay, that's good. That's a good point. But it was a corporation, a private corporation being run by a U.S. company, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Were they over there at the hiring of the DoD?
My understanding is that they were contracted by the UAE.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I imagine we give significant military aid to the UAE, so there could still be a trail.
Okay, it could be just through multiple channels of backdoors. This is where WikiLeaks comes out and releases a giant dossier.
Yeah, this is like Charlie Wilson's War.
Yeah.
We're just doing the same shit all over again.
Back in the dog.
Whew. So another way that we're involved is that there's been a blockade on the Houthi areas. And who's got the Navy who's best at blockades? It's us.
14 aircraft carriers. You know who has the next most aircraft carriers?
France,
and it's 3.
Yeah.
It's a huge spread.
Yeah.
Whenever people were like, "Oh my God, did you hear that China's getting aircraft carrier?" I was like, they got 13 to catch up.
Yeah. Exactly. You shouldn't worry about that. We got other stuff to worry about.
We could dominate the air and sea simultaneously with our aircraft carriers.
Yeah, I want to say this also might be fake news from that old geography teacher who was wrong about Kim Jong-un.
Oh yeah.
But I remember
can we get a name? Not a real name. Just give me some type of fake history teacher name, like Mr. Wilson. Okay, and that way I can picture this Mr. Wilson type character.
Let's call him Mr. Feeney.
Mr. Feeney. All right. What did Mr. Feeney tell you, Jay?
Mr. Feeney said that the United States keeps an aircraft carrier in the Strait of Taiwan at essentially all times in order to separate mainland China from Taiwan. So if we're able to do that, why are you worried about China having one?
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's true.
Yeah, I don't think that's true either.
but I do find that funny.
But I imagine we could have one there at a moment's notice, Yeah,
I don't doubt. We probably have one hiding in the shadow of Taiwan, just as the day goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we're blockading the Houthi areas.
Oh yeah,
which means they're getting no water support. Now, I mean, honestly,
it's Houthi with an H.
Oh, Houthi.
Yeah,
right.
There you go. That was very uncouthy of you.
That was uncouthy of me to say that. That was a terrible joke. I loved it.
Awesome. That was your arbitrary and capricious joke of the day.
Boom. So, okay, is there any other involvement? We're in the seas, we're in the air, we're avoiding the land other than through mercenaries.
Right. That's really about it. To make matters worse, there's been further splintering where we now have an additional rebel group, I think the Southern Transitional Council, who they were Hadi supporters, but now they've broken away and they're also fighting Hadi.
So it's become very multi-fractional,
right?
And
on the surface, it almost has two parties fighting one another, but then when you peer even further, it's chaos. Like for
Mm.
example, Islamic State carried out a coordinated bombing in Houthi mosques across Sana'a after it was taken over by the Houthis, killed I think 140 people, and a couple months later they do a coordinated series of attacks in Aden against troops loyal to Hadi. So we've got the Islamists fighting everybody.
I mean, they're down to fight. The Middle East right now is a hotbed. It is a powder keg that could lead to global conflict. I definitely think that this is the area. It's not going to be Korea where this starts. It's going to be the Middle East.
And it's definitely so much more stable when we get involved, right?
I think so. We think so.
Like, have you seen that meme that's been going around with, I think his name is Eric Andre?
Oh yeah, why did this
like,
thing die so fast?
Yeah, he's like shooting the guy.
Yeah.
I saw a great one that the dead guy is the Middle East, and he turns and he's the West, and it's like, why is the Middle East so unstable?
Yeah, I like the other one that it's like our society, and it's like baby boomers, and they're shooting our society. It's like damn millennials.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think that here's the thing: the United States is never going to leave anything globalization to chance. They're just not. We are going to use our superpower any way we can, and we definitely don't like the fact that Russia, even though they're not a superpower, is trying to exercise superpower type influence in the region. So we're going to continue to, play with our friends over there. Honestly, I think that the two biggest issues that people don't talk about in that area also is just the fact that Saudi Arabia, under its new prince, has consolidated power. And is having some really interesting
it's not even the king anymore who's the most powerful.
No, it's the prince.
The heir apparent has really stepped in front, and he's the one leading the country.
He's leading the country, and he's making social changes, which is huge. And he's definitely taking a more pro-Western view. Mm-hmm. So those are really interesting developments. But so I feel like it's like he's like, hey, yes, I'm consolidating power like a dictator, but I'm letting women go to movie theaters now. So that's a really interesting development. Iran, the Iran deal may blow up with Trump, and that may mean that Iran may go for nuclear weapons again, which brings us to a whole new question. And the Saudi prince has already said that if Iran gets nuclear weapons, that they're going to get nuclear weapons. So we may be entering a Middle Eastern Cold War very soon for regional power dominance.
Oh yeah, like if there's a Vietnam of Saudi Arabia versus Iran, it's Yemen right now.
It's Yemen. Oh yeah. Wow. Oh, well, yeah. I feel like Yemen and Syria are kind of both two proxy wars that these regional powers are fighting in.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of analogs there.
Now it's interesting. Is Russia not involved in Yemen at all?
As far as I know, I am not aware of any Russian involvement in Yemen.
It's interesting.
I think it just might be too far.
Too far.
Because when you look at the map, Syria really isn't all that far from Russia. Like if we were to say, oh, hey, the United States is intervening in Guatemala, I think Guatemala is further than Syria is from Russia.
Oh, wow. Wow. Did not know that.
I mean, it's that extreme, like, kind of leg of Russia.
Russia has an interest because it's close to its borders with Syria, but Iran still has a regional interest. Russia just has less of an interest because it's not as close to them.
Right. And Russia, I guess their stated reason for intervening in Syria was to fight Islamic State.
Well, and also Assad is an ally. Assad is an ally. Let's be honest. That's the reason why they're there. And they don't want American influence in the region.
Right. But I guess I'm pointing out an inconsistency with their rhetoric.
Oh, it's true.
If you really care about global terrorism, why aren't you supporting the Saudis in Yemen?
Because
not to say that they should.
Yeah, it's because if they supported the Saudis, then Iran would be pissed.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Global politics, man. It is
it's some shit.
It's a powder keg. And God, having Trump behind the wheel, that is just terrifying.
Yeah, but according to several memes I saw this week, he solved Korea, so we should all be grateful.
I think we've already addressed that to death.
Yes, I think we have.
Look, I'm just saying this. It's on this day in history April 29th, 2018. I'm calling it. I'm Babe Ruthing it. Kim Jong-un, Nobel Peace Prize, Time Man of the Year. Like, that's what's going to happen. Not saying I necessarily agree with it, but if this works out, I think he's going to get it.
So what are the stakes?
What are the stakes?
Yeah, what are the stakes here?
How about hey Fogo? If I'm right, we're going to Fogo. You pay. If I'm wrong, we'll go to Fogo. I'll pay. Either way, we get Fogo.
Deal.
All right.
Deal.
So we'll see. Now, to clarify, he doesn't have to necessarily get this year's Nobel Peace Prize or Time Man of the Year.
No, it's got to be this year.
Based off of the proximity and the causation of the ending of the Korean War, he is ultimately awarded Nobel Peace Prize and Time Man of the Year.
What if we just do this every year, and for every year that he does not win it, you have to buy it?
I think that has to be tangentially tied to. There has to be some causation here, Jay.
All right, well, we can talk.
We can talk. Well, any final thoughts on Yemen?
Nope. That's really all about I got. What do you think? What do you got?
Well, I'm glad that we brought back up the drone strikes. We should definitely in a future segment just do a rundown of U.S. drone program and where it's come from, where it's going. You know, because honestly,
Buster Bluth's involvement.
Buster Bluth's involvement. Honestly, it popped up under the Obama administration whenever they killed the U.S. citizen in Yemen. But have you heard anything about U.S. drone strikes in a while?
No, it's we've had a lot more to talk about.
We've got a lot more to talk about. So that's definitely something I'd like to put on our docket.
Yeah, I'll add that to the list.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. I guess this takes us to our viewer question segment. Jay, do you have anything in the mailbag?
Yeah, let's check the mailbag. While I'm checking this, viewers out there, you can send us your arbitrary and capricious questions. Any questions that you have in your mind, send them to us. Questions on travel, lifestyle, food, wine, politics. Let us know.
Also, apparently, I was wrong. Cheesecake is not a pie.
Oh,
but I'm not willing to relent on that position. I was just told that I was incorrect.
Oh, really? Was that by a viewer?
Yes. So apparently there was not a consensus among the viewership with our decision.
Well, we're going to have a panel on this at Arb Capcom 2019. So
Arb Capcom?
Yeah, be subscribing to our YouTube channel to get the most up-to-the-date news on Arb Capcom 2019.
Also, we're going to have shirts that says cheesecake is a pie, get over it.
There you go. All right. Well, let's see. We've got one question. This comes from Rachel in New York. Rachel asks, "Hey guys, where's Arb Capcom 2019 going to be held?" Any suggestions, Aaron?
I mean, if we're going to hold a convention and it's just the two of us, I say Vegas.
Ooh.
Or actually the 13 people who listen on a pretty periodic basis. Y'all are all welcome to go to Vegas. We'll just have a Arb Cap live episode and talk about all that there is to talk about in Vegas.
I think that's a great idea, but we've got to do it like old Vegas style. We got to stay somewhere shitty.
Okay, so you're saying like stay on Fullmont? Like go local?
Oh, yeah, Fremont. Yeah. Or like maybe even one of those ones that are like off the strip. Like there's one called the Orleans.
Ooh.
Yeah, like I think when you go in there, it's like intentionally swampy.
The hotel that used to be the Star Trek hotel that's off the strip.
Oh, that one. That's a good one too. I think that's the what is that? It used to be the Hilton. Is that the Westgate?
The Westgate? Yeah, I think it is.
Oh man, I was so upset.
Like this is what we do. What we do. 2019. Actually, let's just do it. 2020 November. Mm-hmm. We'll do Arb Capcom at Trump Towers in Vegas. and we will opine as to the likelihood that he will be the next president of the United States of America. Just saying, we'll when everyone's just leaving that place, we'll probably get a great deal.
Sure.
You know, there's gold everywhere. Like, even though it's not a video podcast, but I mean, we'd get to look at it, and then we can go to the actual casinos and have good times during the day.
And I would like to put this on record, and I want to word this very carefully so that the transcript appears correct. But it is not, and I repeat, not a stated goal of this podcast to be banned from Trump properties by November of 2020.
But we are not opposed to it in any way. Also, if we follow Trump and get banned by his Twitter, we could join in the class action lawsuit against the president's office for violation of the First Amendment.
Oh, that can't be hard, right?
I know it can't be hard. We just have to go on there and say, "Yo, you're a terrible person and a man-child, and that Kim Jong-un's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize before you."
Do you know if our mutual friend, who's quite prolific on Twitter, got banned for doing such a thing?
I don't know. We should ask him.
Because I saw that he tweeted at him, but I I didn't hear the rest of the story.
I feel like Eric doesn't have the follow-through. I mean, he didn't know his last name.
Okay.
We'll call him Eric Andre for simplicity's sake.
There we go.
I feel like he doesn't have the follow-through to get Trump to ban him. So it's like he sent out that one shot in the dark, and unless like you're a troll to Trump, to where he's like, "I'm tired of this guy. You're wrong," and then bans you. I don't think that he would do anything.
Well, one of these days we should have Eric Andre on as a guest.
That'd be fun. We'll also have to let him introduce himself.
Absolutely.
Although, have you ever watched the Eric Andre interview with Alex Jones?
No, I haven't.
It's worth watching. It's ridiculous.
All right, I'll check it out.
Absolutely. Oh.
Well, I think that's all I've got for Arbitrary and Capricious today.
Okay, very cool. Excellent podcast today, Jay. I enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you, sir.
We will see who will have to pay for the FOGO once the Nobel announcements are out. And fine, we'll do it once a year. Fine. If I don't get it this year, I'll get it next year, but it's going to happen. Right. I'll at least concede that point.
There we go.
But we'll have to touch back on Yemen as often as we touch on Syria, because it doesn't seem like this is going anywhere.
Nope.
And we will have to see if the Incel Rebellion continues, and if us normies, Chads and Stacey's out here.
All you Chads and Stacey's out there listening.
Yeah, let's see if your lives are going to be disrupted by the 12 people on the internet that are upset.
Well, I was going to say have a good week, but you know.
Oh.
That's
yeah. Two also have a good week. Like,
all right.
Enjoy it. So signing off for Arbitrary Capricious, I'm Aaron.
I'm Jay.
Have a great week.